The room was electric, a sea of flashing cameras capturing every tense moment, the air thick with anticipation. The debate stage was alive with the hum of whispered conversations, the low murmur of reporters, and the palpable heartbeat of history waiting to unfold. Every eye in the room was fixed on the two figures at the center, Governor Kathy Hochul, poised but visibly tense, and Jasmine Crockett, standing with calm determination, her gaze steady and unflinching. The crowd leaned forward instinctively, sensing that this moment was about to explode beyond anyone's expectations. Suddenly, without warning, Hochul's voice cut through the charged silence, sharp and aggressive. She interrupted Crockett mid-sentence, her words laced with derision and impatience. Cameras snapped frenetically as gasps echoed through the audience. The interruption was not subtle. It was calculated, meant to assert dominance, to throw Crockett off balance in front of the nation. For a brief second, time seemed to freeze. The room fell silent. Nobody could believe what just happened. Social media phones buzzed in real time, live streams catching every flicker of expression, every twitch of surprise. Crockett, however, did not flinch. Her composure contrasted sharply with Hochul's brash intrusion, a serene island of confidence in the storm of confrontation. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing the gravity of the clash. Commentators in the background murmured to each other, their voices betraying a mix of shock and intrigue. The tension was cinematic, a collision of personalities that promised consequences far beyond the stage. Every whisper, every flash of the cameras seemed to amplify the suspense. As Hochul's interruption lingered in the charged air, the audience collectively held its breath, caught between disbelief and anticipation. What was supposed to be a standard debate had become a theater of high-stakes drama, a public test of composure, courage, and conviction. The world was watching, waiting to see which figure would dominate the narrative and which would falter under pressure. And at that precise moment, it became painfully clear. This encounter was more than a debate. It was the beginning of a confrontation that would ignite social media, spark national conversation, and define both their legacies. The cameras continued to click, capturing every reaction, every pulse of tension, as the audience realized that no one present would ever forget this moment. What happened next would leave everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about power, poise, and the unstoppable force of truth. Weeks of tension had led to this moment. The media had painted it as a showdown for the ages, a collision of two political worlds with starkly different visions. Headlines screamed about policy clashes, from healthcare to economic reform, but beneath the surface, the real battle was about identity, integrity, and the future of representation. Political analysts debated endlessly, dissecting past interviews, scrutinizing voting records, and speculating on who would dominate the stage. Every tweet, every viral clip had built a crescendo of expectation, leaving the public eager for a confrontation that promised fireworks. Governor Kathy Hochul entered the debate with the weight of authority behind her, a record of governance and achievement, but also a reputation for calculated aggression. She was seen by many as a figure who wielded power confidently, but some critics whispered of a tendency to underestimate rising challengers. Across the stage, Jasmine Crockett represented something different entirely. A voice of conviction forged in struggle, a presence defined not by titles, but by principle. Her ascent had been marked by resilience, community advocacy, and a steadfast refusal to compromise her values. And now she stood ready to challenge the establishment head-on. The stakes were enormous. This was more than a debate. It was a test of who could shape the conversation, who could define the narrative, and who could capture the hearts and minds of a nation hungry for justice. Every word, every gesture carried implications for millions who saw themselves reflected in Crockett's courage or felt the pull of Hochul's authority. The tension in the room was almost tangible, a pressure that pressed on every spectator, every camera operator, every journalist documenting the scene. The very air seemed to vibrate with anticipation. What happened next could change the entire narrative. The audience sensed it, even before the first words were fully spoken. This was the kind of confrontation that would ripple across social media, dominate news cycles, and fuel heated discussions in homes and workplaces alike. Every subtle glance, every controlled breath was a signal of the battle to come. The room became a crucible, testing not just ideas and policies, but the essence of character under pressure. As the debate unfolded, the ideological clash became undeniable. Hochul's confident, polished rhetoric collided with Crockett's measured, principled responses. Each question posed by moderators seemed to escalate the tension, forcing the participants to navigate a minefield of expectations and scrutiny. Every interruption, every pointed remark, was magnified in the charged atmosphere, a reminder that public perception could shift in an instant. Beyond the immediate stage, the implications were profound. This moment resonated with Americans confronting questions of fairness, equality, and representation. It mirrored the struggles faced by communities historically marginalized in politics and power structures. For some, it was a fight for recognition. For others, a test of whether authority could be held accountable. The stakes extended far beyond the debate itself, reaching into the hearts of citizens who yearned for leaders who embodied dignity, courage, and vision. The audience leaned forward collectively, sensing that they were about to witness more than a performance. They were witnessing history in motion. Every eye stayed fixed, every phone recorded, every heartbeat synced with the rhythm of anticipation. The stage was set, the players defined, and the collision inevitable. And as the lights shone brightly, illuminating both determination and apprehension, one truth was undeniable. The outcome of this encounter would not remain confined to that room. The consequences, the shock waves, and the lessons learned would echo far beyond, shaping perceptions, conversations, and the very fabric of political discourse for weeks to come. Kathy Hochul's rise in politics had been swift, calculated, and undeniably impressive. From her early days as a local attorney navigating the corridors of Albany, she had cultivated a reputation for strategic acumen and political savvy. Each campaign, each public appearance seemed meticulously orchestrated, projecting confidence and control. By the time she assumed the governorship, Hochul had become a familiar face on television screens, in newspapers and across social media feeds, representing a blend of authority, poise, and the promise of pragmatic leadership. To many, she embodied the image of power itself, someone who could navigate the complexities of government with skill and composure. Yet beneath the polished exterior, cracks had begun to appear. Hochul's public persona often projected calm and decisiveness, but insiders noted moments of arrogance and miscalculation that hinted at vulnerability. Her aggressive style in debates and town halls, while effective in some arenas, had occasionally alienated constituents and colleagues alike. Past interviews had revealed a tendency to dismiss critics too quickly, to underestimate challengers whose voices were smaller but whose principles resonated deeply. In the pursuit of control and narrative dominance, she sometimes overlooked the strength of conviction in those she perceived as less seasoned, a pattern that would later play a pivotal role on the debate stage. Hochul's political trajectory was also marked by contradictions that opponents could exploit. She championed progressive initiatives in public statements, yet legislative records sometimes told a different story, revealing compromises and concessions that left her vulnerable to critique. These inconsistencies painted her as a figure both capable and flawed, commanding respect but also inviting scrutiny. Critics and analysts often highlighted moments where her policy positions appeared fluid, shifting with political winds rather than rooted in principle. It was this duality, authority paired with occasional missteps, that made her a fascinating and formidable antagonist, one whose dominance could be challenged under the right circumstances. Her career was dotted with instances of underestimating opponents. In past elections and debates, Hochul had encountered candidates who initially seemed peripheral, only to watch them gain traction with voters and media alike. She had at times relied too heavily on established reputation and institutional support, assuming that confidence alone would secure victory. These patterns revealed a blind spot, a belief that procedural power and media presence could outweigh moral clarity, preparation, and authenticity. Such moments, often overlooked in public discourse, foreshadowed the vulnerability that Jasmine Crockett would later expose in a single, decisive confrontation. Hochul's interactions with staff, advisors, and constituents often reinforced the image of someone who wielded influence with precision, but not without cost. Her approach, while commanding, occasionally left little room for dissenting voices or unexpected challenges. Those who worked closely with her described a leader who was intensely driven, fiercely protective of her political brand, and unwilling to cede control, even in moments where humility might have been advantageous. This insistence on dominance, coupled with an underestimation of moral authority over procedural authority, created an environment ripe for dramatic confrontation. The public, meanwhile, had come to view Hochul through a lens shaped by media narratives of competence and assertiveness. Her speeches emphasized decisiveness, solutions, and the ability to manage crises. Yet the very qualities that elevated her, confidence, assertiveness, and public poise, also made missteps more pronounced when she faced opponents who refused to yield to intimidation. Her successes, while numerous, became double-edged, setting expectations for flawless performance that a determined challenger could exploit. In the context of the debate with Jasmine Crockett, all these elements coalesced. Hochul's history of dominance, her pattern of underestimating principled challengers, and the subtle contradictions in her record set the stage for a confrontation where confidence could no longer substitute for clarity, integrity, and adaptability. The audience, even if unaware of every past misstep, could sense the tension building. A leader accustomed to controlling the narrative facing someone unshakable in conviction. As Hochul stepped onto the debate stage, the weight of her trajectory pressed against her. Every achievement, every carefully crafted public persona was on display, and every vulnerability, every instance of past overconfidence, became potential ammunition for a challenger who had nothing to lose but everything to prove. This was not just a political clash. It was the collision of two paradigms: calculated authority versus principled resilience, established power versus emerging moral clarity. And in that collision, the first cracks in Hochul's armor were already beginning to show, setting the stage for a confrontation that would captivate a nation and redefine perceptions of power, control, and the consequences of underestimating someone who refuses to be silenced. Jasmine Crockett's journey to the debate stage was forged in perseverance, sacrifice, and an unyielding commitment to justice. Born into a family that valued hard work, community, and resilience, she learned early on that progress was never handed freely. It was earned through determination and a willingness to stand up for what was right. From her earliest years, Crockett observed the struggles of her community, families grappling with inequality, neighbors striving for opportunity, and voices too often ignored by those in power. These experiences did not harden her. They ignited a sense of purpose that would define her life and career. Her academic path reflected both ambition and dedication. Crockett excelled in her studies, driven not by personal ambition alone, but by a desire to equip herself with the tools needed to effect real change. Law school was not simply a step in a career. It was a calling, a way to understand the system and leverage it in service of those whose voices were marginalized. She immersed herself in civil rights law, advocacy work, and community initiatives, earning a reputation as someone who combined intellect with an unshakable moral compass. Each case she took, each effort she spearheaded, reflected a determination to ensure justice was accessible to all, not just the privileged few. Crockett's entry into politics was guided by the same principles. She did not seek office for fame, influence, or personal gain. Her campaigns were grounded in listening, connecting, and responding to the needs of the people she represented. From town halls to community centers, she built trust through action, fighting for policies that addressed inequality, education reform, criminal justice, and healthcare access. Her approach was never performative. It was deeply personal, shaped by lived experience and a belief that leadership must be rooted in empathy and accountability. Supporters often described her as a beacon of integrity in a landscape frequently overshadowed by spectacle and posturing. Throughout her rise, Crockett faced obstacles that would have deterred lesser figures. She encountered systemic barriers, political gatekeeping, and moments of personal doubt. Yet with each challenge, she demonstrated resilience and clarity of purpose. Sacrifices were made, long hours away from family, relentless scrutiny, and the emotional toll of confronting entrenched systems of power. Each trial strengthened her resolve and sharpened her understanding of the stakes involved in political leadership. Those who followed her journey began to recognize a pattern. Crockett was not merely ambitious. She was prepared, principled, and unwilling to compromise on the values that defined her. Her leadership was characterized by a rare combination of intellectual rigor and emotional intelligence. She listened before she spoke, weighed consequences before acting, and grounded every decision in the real-world impact on her constituents. This approach won her admiration, not only for her accomplishments, but for the manner in which she achieved them. Stories circulated of Crockett mentoring young activists, intervening on behalf of the underserved, and quietly challenging injustice at every turn. The admiration she inspired was not built on spectacle. It was earned through consistency, courage, and the willingness to fight for what many others might have considered impossible. As the debate with Governor Hochul approached, Crockett's background became more than biography. It became her armor. Every moment of struggle, every instance of community service, and every principled stand had prepared her for confrontation on the national stage. Where others might be rattled by interruption or aggression, Crockett's experiences had instilled patience, focus, and unshakable composure. Her career had taught her to navigate pressure without compromising integrity, to respond to provocation with clarity, and to turn challenges into opportunities to demonstrate moral authority. The contrast between her trajectory and Hochul's was striking. While Hochul wielded institutional power and polished rhetoric, Crockett carried authenticity, resilience, and lived experience. She had seen the consequences of policies from the perspective of those affected, and she understood that leadership required courage, empathy, and a readiness to speak truth to power. Even when the room was silent, even when cameras were flashing, and even when the stakes were unprecedented, her supporters sensed this readiness, even before the debate began. They recognized that Crockett's life had been a continuous preparation for moments like this. Moments when courage met opportunity, when conviction collided with challenge, and when integrity faced the test of public scrutiny. It was not just political skill that defined her. It was a moral certainty rooted in experience, sacrifice, and the unwavering belief that representation was more than a title. It was a responsibility. As she stepped onto the stage, Crockett embodied more than ambition. She carried the hopes and voices of countless individuals who had been overlooked, underestimated, or silenced. Every decision she had made, every battle she had fought, had built toward this moment. Her gaze, calm yet resolute, conveyed a quiet power, a readiness to face aggression with truth, and to transform confrontation into clarity. The audience could feel it, even in the first seconds. Here was a leader forged in struggle, prepared to rise above interruption, poised to turn challenge into a defining victory. In this crucible of high-stakes debate, Crockett's backstory was more than context. It was the foundation of her strength. It promised that when Hochul launched her attack, Crockett would not merely respond. She would illuminate the contrast between authority and authenticity, between arrogance and principle, and between spectacle and substance. And as the lights shone and the cameras focused, it was clear that the confrontation about to unfold was no ordinary exchange. It was a moment that would showcase not just political skill, but the enduring power of integrity, preparation, and the courage to stand unwavering in the face of intimidation. The air on the debate stage shifted in an almost imperceptible way, as if the room itself had taken a collective breath. Hochul, sensing momentum slipping, leaned forward once more, ready to assert control, but Crockett did not respond immediately. She paused, scanning the room, letting the weight of the moment settle. Every camera lens, every whispering audience member, every social media live stream froze in anticipation. The silence was deliberate, the calm before the storm, and it amplified the suspense. This was not just a response. It was a statement. Finally, Crockett spoke. Her voice was measured, clear, carrying both authority and empathy. Each word was chosen with precision, each argument anchored in facts, evidence, and principle. She addressed the points Hochul had raised, not with desperation or bluster, but with reasoned clarity. "It's not enough to hold office if you overlook the very people you claim to serve," Crockett said, her gaze unwavering. "Policy without principle leaves communities behind, and history will remember those who stood on the side of convenience rather than justice." The room reacted instantly. There was a ripple through the audience, a mix of murmurs, nods, and wide-eyed attention. The debate that had been heating into tension now became electric with anticipation. Hochul's confident posture began to falter. The tight grip on her podium betrayed the growing pressure. Every pause Crockett inserted, every deliberate choice of words, magnified Hochul's hesitation, and it became clear that the carefully maintained composure of the governor was cracking. Crockett continued, layering her points with historical context, statistical evidence, and ethical argumentation. She contrasted her own trajectory of service with the failures and oversights she highlighted in Hochul's record, painting a stark moral contrast. The audience could feel the tension rise, as if witnessing a slow-motion unraveling of authority in real time. Each revelation landed like a pebble dropped in water, expanding outward, touching the minds and hearts of those watching. Social media erupted simultaneously. Twitter feeds exploded with hashtags: "Just Crockett clap back," "Truth vs. Power," "Just Debate Moment," each post accompanied by short video clips of Crockett's calm dismantling of Hochul's arguments. Comments flooded in. "This is why integrity matters. Crockett is unshakable. Every word hits harder than the last." Memes began circulating instantly, visual shorthand for the unfolding spectacle, while pundits scrambled to analyze, dissect, and frame what had just occurred. In real time, the narrative was shifting, and the momentum had unmistakably swung in Crockett's favor. Every eye was on Hochul as Crockett's words sank in. The polished governor, so accustomed to controlling narrative and dominating discourse, now seemed visibly rattled. Pauses in her responses grew longer, inflections sharper but less confident. Each attempt to interrupt or redirect was met with Crockett's steady gaze, a reminder that intimidation would not succeed here. The contrast between the two figures became almost cinematic, one leader unraveling under scrutiny, the other embodying calm authority and moral certainty. Crockett's counterattack was not only verbal, it was strategic. She anticipated each challenge, addressed every potential criticism preemptively, and used Hochul's own statements against her, framing contradictions and inconsistencies without a trace of personal animosity. "Experience is not measured in titles or tenure alone," Crockett emphasized, "but in the lives you touch and the justice you uphold." The resonance of that line drew audible reactions from the audience. Some gasped, others murmured agreement, and cameras captured the subtle shifting expressions across the room. The suspense was heightened by the deliberate pacing of her delivery. Crockett allowed moments of silence between points, letting her words sink into the consciousness of everyone present. Hochul's attempts to interject grew increasingly strained, her confidence visibly faltering with each passing moment. The audience sensed a pivotal turning point. This was no longer a typical exchange. It was a confrontation that revealed the core character of each leader, exposed the vulnerabilities of authority, and celebrated the strength of principle. As the debate progressed, Crockett shifted seamlessly between facts and emotional appeal. She referenced communities affected by policy decisions, shared stories that humanized abstract debates, and reminded viewers of the stakes beyond political theater. Hochul's attempts to regain control only underscored the widening gap between authority reliant on position and leadership grounded in conviction. The contrast was undeniable, a visual and auditory drama that left spectators both riveted and reflective. In real time, social media continued to amplify every moment. Clips of Crockett's measured takedowns circulated across platforms, drawing thousands of reactions per minute. Memes juxtaposing her calm composure against Hochul's visible frustration went viral, further cementing the narrative of hero versus faltering authority. Commentators highlighted the strategic brilliance of Crockett's delivery, praising her ability to remain unshaken while dismantling an opponent who had underestimated her preparation and resolve. By the climax of the exchange, Hochul's composure had eroded almost completely. Subtle signs, tightened shoulders, sharper tones, hurried gestures betrayed her struggle to respond effectively. Crockett, however, maintained a commanding presence, each statement reinforcing not only her position, but her credibility, empathy, and moral authority. The audience, fully engaged, could sense that the debate had transformed into a defining moment, one that would resonate far beyond the confines of the stage. The final moments of Crockett's counterattack combined factual clarity with emotional resonance. She reminded the audience of the responsibilities inherent in leadership, the importance of accountability, and the enduring value of integrity over mere spectacle. Hochul, unable to respond with equal weight, remained on the defensive, her previous aggression replaced by hesitation. The contrast between them, stark and undeniable, crystallized the narrative. Here was a leader forged in resilience, delivering truth with poise. And there was a seasoned politician struggling to maintain control under the unflinching light of moral scrutiny. As the applause and murmurs swelled, the debate stage felt charged with significance. Crockett had not only defended herself, she had redefined the encounter, demonstrating that preparation, integrity, and courage could overcome aggression and arrogance. Social media continued to explode with real-time reactions, trending hashtags, and commentary that framed the moment as historic. The cinematic quality of the confrontation, the calm hero facing a faltering antagonist, cemented itself in the minds of all who witnessed it, leaving Hochul visibly shaken and the audience electrified. By the end of the exchange, the stage had shifted irrevocably. Crockett's counterattack was more than a rebuttal. It was a demonstration of leadership, moral clarity, and the enduring power of composed truth. Every pause, every fact, every emotionally charged line had amplified the tension, magnified the contrast, and ensured that the impact would reverberate long after the debate ended. The room, the cameras, the audience, and the world watching online had witnessed a defining moment, a mic drop that transcended politics, leaving Hochul speechless and Crockett firmly in command of the narrative. The moment Crockett delivered her counterattack, the world outside the debate stage erupted. Phones recorded every word, and within seconds, social media platforms were flooded with clips of her composed takedown. Hashtags began trending almost instantaneously. Crockett clapback, truth over arrogance, debate dominance. Short, sharp clips capturing Hochul's visible frustration and Crockett's calm authority circulated rapidly. Shared and reshared by thousands, each post reinforcing the narrative of hero versus faltering authority. Memes began to spread, juxtaposing Crockett's unwavering composure with Hochul's crumbling confidence, sparking laughter, admiration, and debate across the country. The ripple effect extended far beyond the digital sphere. Political commentators dissected the exchange endlessly, breaking down each point Crockett made and highlighting Hochul's missteps. Cable news panels debated the implications. Social media analysts charted engagement spikes, and YouTube recaps exploded with views. Celebrities and influencers weighed in, sharing their perspectives and amplifying the conversation. Each reaction added fuel to the growing fire as the public collectively processed the confrontation. Every clip, every post, and every comment reinforced the impression that this debate was no ordinary political encounter. It had become a defining cultural moment. The contrast in public perception was stark and immediate. Crockett's supporters celebrated her composure and intelligence, praising her ability to remain unshaken under pressure. She was lauded not just for her debate performance, but for embodying the values many Americans long to see in leadership: integrity, resilience, and moral clarity. Across social media, admiration poured in from diverse communities, reflecting her resonance with audiences who saw their own struggles and aspirations mirrored in her courage. Every post, comment, and share reinforced the idea that Crockett had not only won the argument, but had captured the public's imagination. Meanwhile, Hochul's public image faced scrutiny and critique. Clips of her interruptions, tense gestures, and failed attempts to regain control circulated widely, amplified by commentary dissecting her style and strategy. Journalists noted the rare cracks in her confident facade, framing them as a moment where authority struggled against principle. Viewers debated her performance endlessly, some offering defense, many questioning her composure and judgment. The disparity between hero and antagonist became a focal point. One leader elevated by calm authority, the other diminished by visible frustration and overconfidence. The national conversation intensified with every passing hour. Podcasts, news shows, and social media threads explored not only the debate's substance, but its symbolism. Analysts discussed the clash as a representation of larger societal dynamics: power versus principle, aggression versus composure, spectacle versus substance. The discourse extended into everyday conversations. Dinner tables, workplaces, and classrooms became forums where people debated the performance, dissected the strategies, and reflected on what leadership truly meant. Crockett's performance became shorthand for integrity and courage under pressure, while Hochul's struggle to maintain dominance served as a cautionary tale about arrogance and underestimating principled challengers. The viral nature of the moment created a feedback loop, further amplifying Crockett's reach. Influential voices on social media curated clips, commentary threads exploded with discussion, and engagement metrics soared. Short-form content distilled the exchange into digestible, shareable moments that continued to reach millions, reinforcing the narrative of hero versus antagonist across platforms and demographics. The momentum was undeniable, and the conversation was no longer limited to political observers. It had become a national cultural phenomenon. In communities across the country, people celebrated Crockett's composure as a reflection of what they valued in leadership. Stories circulated of viewers feeling seen, inspired, and validated, resonating with her identity-driven narrative and principled approach. The discussion extended beyond politics, touching on themes of resilience, representation, and moral clarity. It was a moment that reminded people that leadership was not just about holding power. It was about wielding it responsibly, with courage and integrity. Hochul's attempts to redirect the narrative met limited success. Each statement she released, each interview she gave, was analyzed against the backdrop of Crockett's performance, often reinforcing the contrast rather than diminishing it. Media coverage consistently highlighted the disparity. One candidate had captured hearts and attention through composure and conviction. The other had faltered under pressure despite experience and authority. The juxtaposition became emblematic, a lesson in how character and principle can outweigh status and position in the court of public opinion. By the end of the day, the debate had transformed into a cultural touchstone. Every clip, every viral post, every news segment reinforced the story of Crockett's ascendancy and Hochul's struggle. The narrative had shifted from a simple policy discussion to a dramatic saga of character, resilience, and leadership under pressure. Across social media feeds, newsrooms, and living rooms nationwide, people shared their reactions, debated the implications, and reflected on the power of truth, preparation, and unwavering moral clarity. In this aftermath, Crockett emerged not just as a debate victor, but as a symbol of courage and integrity, embodying the values of a public seeking authenticity in leadership. Hochul's faltering performance, in contrast, served as a reminder that authority without principle and confidence without moral grounding could be undone in a single decisive moment. The shock waves of that exchange would continue to ripple through politics, media, and culture, cementing the confrontation as a defining moment in both their careers and in the broader national conversation about leadership, power, and justice. As the debate stage quieted and the cameras continued to capture every lingering expression, Jasmine Crockett seized the moment to reframe what had unfolded. She did not gloat, she did not mock. Instead, she spoke with clarity and conviction, transforming the confrontation into a lesson that transcended politics. Leadership, she said, is measured not by volume or titles, but by the courage to uphold dignity, to serve with integrity, and to act for justice, even when no one is watching. Her words echoed through the room, resonating not only with those present, but with viewers across the nation. In reframing the attack, Crockett reminded everyone that confrontation was not simply about winning a debate or silencing an opponent. It was about exemplifying the principles that define true leadership: respect, empathy, and unwavering moral clarity. She highlighted that arrogance and aggression may dominate the moment, but they cannot overpower truth, commitment, or the will to serve others. Every gesture, every carefully chosen word in her response reinforced the idea that integrity was not situational. It was a constant, guiding principle that could withstand pressure, intimidation, and opposition. The audience, both in the room and online, felt the weight of her message. Viewers witnessed a leader who had turned adversity into opportunity, tension into clarity, and challenge into inspiration. Crockett's delivery reached a crescendo not through volume or theatrics, but through authenticity and purpose. Her story, her composure, and her principled response validated the experiences of countless individuals who had faced obstacles, injustice, or marginalization. She became a mirror for the audience's own struggles and aspirations, a symbol that resilience and ethical courage could prevail even against established authority. Power may shout, but truth resonates, Crockett continued, her voice steady, her conviction unwavering. The statement crystallized the moral of the confrontation, distilling a universal lesson from a specific political clash. It reminded viewers that true influence stems not from dominance or aggression, but from the ability to act with integrity and courage. The applause and murmurs of agreement reflected a collective recognition that this was more than a debate moment. It was a lesson in character, a demonstration of values in action, and an illustration of how principled leadership can inspire widespread trust and admiration. Crockett's resolution extended beyond personal victory. It was a call to reflection and action for the audience. She emphasized that every individual, regardless of position or circumstance, has the capacity to embody courage, uphold dignity, and make choices rooted in justice. Her message encouraged viewers to internalize these values in their own lives, to stand firm when challenged, and to let principle guide action even when confronted with intimidation or hostility. It was a lesson in self-respect, empowerment, and the ripple effect of principled behavior on communities, workplaces, and society at large. The emotional crescendo of the moment left the audience inspired and reflective. Crockett's ability to transform confrontation into affirmation of universal truths elevated the narrative from political theater to moral instruction. Her composure, intelligence, and moral authority provided a model for leadership that transcended partisanship, offering a vision of public service that celebrated resilience, fairness, and ethical clarity. Every statement, every pause, every acknowledgement of responsibility amplified the impact, creating a moment of inspiration that would resonate long after the debate concluded. By the end of the exchange, the room had absorbed not only the significance of Crockett's victory, but also the enduring lesson she imparted: that dignity, justice, and service will always outweigh arrogance, and that the courage to act with principle can inspire others to do the same. The applause, the social media buzz, and the reflective conversations it sparked all reinforced a singular truth. Authentic leadership is measured by the power of one's values, the strength of one's integrity, and the unwavering commitment to do what is right. Even under pressure, Crockett's resolution was a reminder that anyone can embody these principles, whether in politics, in communities, or in daily life. Her words served as a call to action, a moral compass for viewers to internalize the courage and values she exemplified, encouraging each person to rise to challenges with integrity and resilience. It was not only a conclusion to the debate, It was a timeless lesson on the enduring impact of truth, character, and the courage to stand unwavering in the face of opposition. Governor Kathy Hochul's aggressive attack may have started the confrontation, but it was Jasmine Crockett's unwavering composure and moral clarity that defined the moment. Seconds after the interruption, Crockett transformed tension into triumph, proving that dignity, truth, and integrity will always outshine arrogance and intimidation. The debate stage became more than a political arena. It became a demonstration of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of principle. The lessons of this encounter extend far beyond the cameras and headlines. Crockett's performance reminds us that leadership is not about who can dominate a room, shout the loudest, or control the narrative. It is about standing firm in your values, speaking truth with clarity, and acting with courage when it matters most. Her example shows that integrity and service are not just ideals, they are forces that resonate, inspire, and create real change in communities across the nation. Now, the story does not end with this single debate. Each of us has the opportunity to internalize these lessons, to carry courage into our own lives, and to champion justice, fairness, and dignity in the spaces we inhabit. Share this moment, discuss it with others, and let the principles Crockett exemplified guide your actions. Join the movement for integrity and accountability. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of courage, truth, and leadership. Share this video with friends and family who need a reminder that principle always prevails over arrogance. Together, we can celebrate heroes who rise above intimidation and inspire us all to act with purpose, compassion, and unwavering moral clarity. The moment is now. The time to stand for what is right has never been more urgent.